He laughed at her, loudly, cruelly, just for being old. But karma doesn't sleep, and when it hits ... it hits hard. When Margaret, a spry 76-year-old, went to her local grocery store, she intended to pick up some fresh fruit and maybe a pastry for her grandkids. However, what she didn't anticipate was the condescending 30-year-old man behind her, who mocked her age and made fun of her slowly shuffling toward the counter. It was a typical Tuesday afternoon when Margaret entered the brightly lit supermarket. The store was bustling with activity, parents pushing carts with squawking kids, colleagues grabbing a quick lunch, and elderly couples picking up the essentials for the week. As she navigated the crowded aisles, she picked out a few things from her list: oranges, a loaf of bread, and some chicken broth. She also grabbed a sweet treat for her grandkids, an apple pie with a side of vanilla ice cream. When she made it to the checkout, she placed her items on the conveyor belt and began rummaging through her purse for her wallet. She always paid in cash, but today she couldn't find any. "Oh dear," she muttered, digging deeper into her worn leather bag. Just then, a hand holding a wad of bills appeared above her head. "Here, let me pay for your stuff, Grandma," said a kind-faced woman. No, darling. I have it," Margaret replied, frantically patting her pockets. The woman insisted, but Margaret refused, assuring her she'd found her money. She withdrew 3 crumpled $20 bills and laid them on the counter. But as she reached for the coins in her purse, the crinkled bills fell to the floor. She bent to pick them up, but her old bones weren't cooperating. The line behind her grew longer, their impatience evident in their sighs and shuffling feet. Margaret felt humiliated and rushed. "I'm sorry, I'm so clumsy," she whispered, defeated. Suddenly, a mocking laugh broke the silence. Margaret froze, the crumpled bills still in her hand. Startled, she turned to see who was laughing, and her heart sank. Standing directly behind her was a good-looking man in his 30s. His friends, 2 guys and a girl, were doubled over with laughter, pointing at her. "What's so funny?" a woman's voice asked sharply. The snickers subsided. "Nothing," the man said, wiping a tear from his eye. "It's nothing." Margaret looked away, ashamed. She quickly gathered the fallen bills and placed them on the counter. The cashier, a teenager with bored eyes and purple streaks in his hair, scanned her items without a word. One by one, they disappeared into the machine, leaving behind only the sound of the electronic beeps. Finally, he pushed the total button. "That'll be $27.73. Margaret's hand trembled as she reached for the coins. In her purse, she needed change for the parking meter. She had planned to use the exact amount. Now she wouldn't have enough for the meter. As she rummaged through her purse, the man from before spoke up. "Need help counting your pennies, Grandma?" he asked sarcastically. The other shoppers shifted uncomfortably. The cashier lowered his gaze, avoiding her eyes. Margaret bit her lip, tears stinging them. "Sorry," she whispered. She didn't raise her voice, but everyone could hear the sadness in her soft tone. In an instant, the snickering resumed. "Don't worry, Jake," one of his male friends said, slapping him on the shoulder. "She won't be needing any of that change where she's going." "Yeah, right," another friend chimed in. "Straight to the retirement home for you, old lady." Margaret shrunk under their taunts, wishing she could disappear. At that moment, the store seemed too small, its walls closing in on her. She wanted to leave, but her legs felt heavy and unmoving. As if sensing her distress, a gentle voice cut through the mockery. "Leave her alone," a boy said bravely. Everyone turned to see a 10-year-old kid standing by his mother. She was looking at him with pride, a gentle smile gracing her lips. The boy wasn't tall enough to reach the counter, so he climbed onto his toes to address the man who had introduced himself as Jake. You're supposed to respect your elders. My mom says people like you forget they'll get old too, he said defiantly. Silence fell over the store. No one dared to break it. Jake scowled and shook his head, then threw his head back and burst out laughing. You think I'm scared of getting old? He exclaimed. Watch me. I'll show you. With that, he grabbed his purchases and stormed out of the store, nearly knocking over a display of cereals. The other customers shifted uneasily. After paying for her groceries, Margaret quietly thanked the boy and his mother. Good job, Ethan, the woman said, ruffling her son's hair. That took courage. Then she turned to Margaret and added, I'm sorry about him. He has no manners. It's all right, dear, Margaret replied with a gentle smile. You raised him well. He has a good heart. The woman blushed and smiled back. 2 weeks later, Jake walked into a job interview. He was nervous, hopeful, and desperate. Losing his previous job had been his fault. He'd been late too many times, and his boss, a stickler for punctuality, had fired him. Now he needed a new job urgently. He had rent to pay and bills to settle. He smoothed his hair and adjusted his shirt, hoping his appearance would make up for his lack of experience. He sat down opposite a smartly dressed man in his late 50s. The interviewer was the CEO of the company. Jake extended his hand. Nice to meet you, Mr. Anderson, he said confidently, hiding his shaking hands. Please call me David, the CEO replied warmly, shaking his hand. So, David, the CEO began, leaning forward. Tell me why we should hire you. Jake launched into a practice speech, highlighting his strengths and downplaying his weaknesses. He hoped he'd impress the CEO, but as he spoke, he couldn't shake off a nagging feeling that something was off. He couldn't quite put his finger on it. Then he noticed the familiar face sitting beside the CEO, but he couldn't believe his eyes. The woman was Margaret, the cashier from the supermarket. She was dressed not in the green apron and name tag, but in a tailored pantsuit that accentuated her figure. Her hair was neatly styled, and her eyes sparkled with intelligence. But most surprisingly, she was the HR director. Jake's face drained of color. He tried to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. He remembered her from the store, the way she'd handled those disrespectful jerks. Could she have been the HR director all along? Had he just insulted her in front of her boss? He stammered. I'm sorry, ma'am. I didn't know. It's all right, Jake, Margaret said calmly. There was no malice in her voice, only quiet strength. We've all made mistakes. She turned to the CEO. David, this candidate isn't suitable. His attitude isn't a good fit for our company culture. David nodded. Thank you, Margaret. I agree. You may leave now. Jake stood up, defeated. As he walked past Margaret, he wanted to apologize, but the words caught in his throat. Shame burned in his cheeks. He couldn't believe he'd been so stupid. How could he have treated such a strong, smart woman like that? Outside, the sun shone brightly, but Jake felt like the whole world was crashing down on him. He looked back at the imposing building, realizing he'd lost the best chance he'd had in a long time. As he walked away, he heard Margaret's parting words echoing in his ears. Everyone deserves a second chance. But first, they must learn respect. In the end, karma served him right. He got no job and learned a valuable lesson. That day in the store, the old lady who seemed so frail and insignificant had turned out to be a force to be reckoned with. Would you have spoken up like the boy did? Tell us in the comments. What would you do if you saw this happen? Tag someone who needs this reminder. Let's bring respect back into society. One story at a time. If this moved you, share it. It costs nothing and may touch someone else's heart. As always, stay tuned for more stories that inspire change. Thank you for watching.